Okay, part two of storytelling. And the reason why I really divided it into three parts is because I know I'm going to flesh out the details. So let's go straight into the topic. The three P's, PPP, the three P's of storytelling. This is macro view. I'm not going to talk about like the micro techniques and how to do that. Okay. So the macro view is the three P's, and just remember this: plot, person, purpose. Okay. Plot, person, purpose. Now the plot and the person can interchange, but the purpose has to always be there. Usually at the very end. Don't bring it up in the very beginning. Always have it at the very end. So for example, you're talking in a social gathering and they start asking you stuff and you want to tell a story. Don't start with, I've got a story, but I don't think anyone wants to listen. You're ruining the whole mood, right? So don't start with that. So plot, person, purpose. If you watch movies, for example, I'm a movie guy. When you watch movies, it always begins with either a plot or a person. It's just one of the two, plot or person. If you watch movies where it starts, it's called in medias res, meaning it begins in the middle. One of those kinds of movies is what we see in Chris Hemsworth's film Extraction. If you watch that, the beginning of the film, he's already like in the middle of something. It's a gunfight and he's bleeding and he's bruised and everything, and so it begins with plot. It begins with an action-packed scene, and everyone's like, "What happened?" So it asks the question, "What happened? I gotta know." All right, what happened? I have to know. So plot. You can begin with a plot. How do we begin with plots? Okay, let's go back to the other one. Or person. Other stories can begin with persons or people. So plot, person, purpose. Person or people. I'm sure you've seen movies like, for example, Batman versus Superman. It begins with a person. So you see Bruce Wayne. No. It was Martha Wayne and Bruce was, of course. So basically, it's Bruce and his parents, and they're walking down the alley. And we all know the story of Batman, but it's still amazing to see. This cop, not cop, this burglar comes in, and there's no cops around, no one to protect them, and then a gun comes up, and you see just this face on young Bruce Wayne, and then the trigger is, no, not yet, the gun is raised, and then you see the father get in front, try to protect his family, and then boom, and then he gets hit, falls to the ground. You see the gun with the trigger with the necklace, the pearl necklace of Martha, and then it all shatters, and you see the face of Bruce Wayne, this young child, helpless, defenseless, doesn't know what to do. He's in shock. Person. Movies begin with one of those, plot or person. So when you tell stories, it's the same thing. You start with a plot or you start with a person. How do you start with plot? So here are a few tips. So I'm going to give you some tips how to start with plot. Start with plots that make people want to know more. So here's an example. If I go like this, guys, there was this one time ba, wala na, it's gone. It's like people are like, okay, what about this one time? You gotta start strong, you gotta start fast, but you gotta start with a plot. So it can begin with a question, it can begin with a statement that would make people want to hear. And of course, more of this will be in part 3 tomorrow. So here's an example. If I said to you, and I'm gonna explain this probably in the next video. If I start this way, do you guys have any idea what it's like to exhale corned beef? And they're like, corned beef, you're exhaling corned beef. I gotta know this. And then you add one more, you go, and Coca-Cola. And they're like, whoa! And then you add one more, through your nose. And everyone's like, exhaling corned beef, Coca-Cola through your nose. Oh man, I gotta know how this happened. And so you start talking about the plot. Right? You begin with a plot. You begin in medias res, like Chris Hemsworth in Extraction. All right? And then you go from there. And then you go back to the story. If you want to begin with a person, you can use yourself if your story is about yourself or someone else. So you don't just go, I have a story. Never start with I have a story, or rarely do that because it's really weird. But you can say, if it's about you can say, that reminds me of an insane experience I had, or this crazy experience I had, or that takes me back to high school days when bam, and you talk about what happened there. So you're talking about yourself and your own perspective, and that brings people through into your mind and see things through your eyes and hear things through your ears. So, person, right? So, plot or person. Or if it's someone else, you can say, that reminds me of, and then you talk about the person and something interesting about that person. So, but you begin with that. In the same way with Batman versus Superman, it's not just a story about Bruce Wayne. You don't start with Bruce Wayne was born in Gotham City. It doesn't start there. It starts at a very memorable point in Bruce Wayne's life. The death of his parents, the murder of his parents. And that just gripped me. I'm like, no! So you got to start with that. So you can say something like, for example, that reminds me of my aunt who went from rags to riches in 2 months. And everyone's like, I want to hear about that. Rags and riches in 2 months. So that's how you can start with person. It's a person, and then build interest. It's a plot, build interest, right? So plot or person. Start with either of the two. Then after that, you go to purpose. Purpose has to be there. If there's no action point, there's no purpose, there's no quest, there's no goal, then the story will lose its appeal and its value. People want goals, or people want questions answered. Have you ever watched a story and then the question is never answered? The purpose is never really revealed. Like, why are you telling that story? Wala lang. The wala lang answer, I just wanted to share it. There's no point. Eventually, people will lose interest in what you're saying. So you gotta have a goal or a purpose. Like this rant right now, you want to know how that's delivered. So how do we deliver the purpose? Let's go back to the examples that I mentioned yesterday in the last video about dating. So if my purpose, for example, in this date is to get Rainy, my wife, let's say we're still dating, to get my wife to try going free diving with me, that's my purpose. So I'm not just going to go, so why do you like free diving? So I'm going to use a practical example. Why do you like free diving? I'm going to go with person, plot, and then purpose. So why do you like free diving? There was this one time when I was sick the entire summer. Sorry. Repeat. There was this one day during summer I was sick for an entire day. And I was very young and I watched Jaws, all three, Jaws 1, Jaws 2, Jaws 3, in one day. That night I had a nightmare, and ever since then I had a fear of sharks. And so she's gonna go, I asked about free diving, your story is a fear of sharks. That's a contradiction. So now there's curiosity. I want to know why you're free diving when you're afraid of sharks. And then I go, the reason why I go free diving is because of two big factors. And they're like, okay, two big factors. What are those? First, I want to conquer my fear of sharks. And they're like, wow. Secondly, I want to know just how much my body can take. And then you start talking. So there's a story. I start with person, and then I go with plot. And then what's the plot is this. So I get into the plot. When I go free diving, there are certain things that happen in my body. The feeling of holding your breath for a long time, it feels like there's fire in your lungs. And so what am I doing? I'm talking about my experience in such a way that she knows how I feel. Now imagine having fire in your lungs with a desire to breathe. You need air. But at the same time, the fire in my lungs is the same color of fire I see in the corals. I see red colors, I see orange, and the waves and the light strike the corals in such a way that the sea coral actually looks like fire underwater. It's just that amazing. And so when you talk about that, it's whoa. So from person to plot, and she's experiencing it from my point of view. And then I go, you know what? The only way to explain it is for you to experience it yourself. Maybe next week we can go free diving. And so I'm trying to get a second date. In the beach, free diving. And so she sees where I'm coming from. I hope this helped. See you tomorrow for part 3.